Hello, and welcome to the For Her Empire podcast. I'm your host, Abby Maucher, and in this podcast, we address the personal and the business issues that female entrepreneurs face in their day-to-day lives. So my guest is Babita, who you've probably already met. Hi, Babita.
Hi, Abby.
So Babita is a licensed psychotherapist and a psychoanalyst, right?
I am. Mm-hmm.
And in a previous interview with her, we talked about divorce recovery, and this is part of a 3-part series. So today's interview is about narcissism, and probably sort of figure out what exactly a narcissist is, and if it's just like extreme self-love, and how it affects you being around a narcissist. So the impact it has both for adults, for kids, and how it looks like for men and women. Okay. Introduce yourself.
Great. So as Abby said, I'm a psychotherapist, psychoanalyst, and also a certified coach. I focus on relationship work, toxic relationships, narcissism, life transitions, and workplace, stress and mental health issues in the workplace. So this part, as Abby you were describing, is the space around narcissism, which comes up a lot in my practice, and I think has become in some ways a really hot item that's just slowly becoming more and more in the spotlight today. People are becoming more aware of it.
Okay. And so what exactly counts as narcissism? At what point is like self-love on that level too extreme?
Sure. So it's interesting because a lot of people, when they think or they use the word a little flippantly, like, oh, you're so narcissistic. So a lot of people associate that with like maybe being vain or self-love, but actually it runs a lot deeper. So narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder that's diagnosable. And even though there's a spectrum of narcissism, meaning some individuals have certain symptoms, it can even go up to the pathological narcissist, the narcissistic abuser, etc. And what it means is it's characterized by a grandiose sense of self, importance, a lack of empathy for others. Mm-hmm. You're unable to sort of be in someone else's subjective experience. And the need for excessive admiration, power, and control that goes beyond anything that one would experience as far as someone being a little vain or sometimes being a little controlling. This goes beyond that.
Yeah. Okay. And how does that look like for different people? Like for men and for women, how does that narcissist look like on both sides?
Sure. What a great question, because oftentimes there's an assumption that we're focusing on men. But really there is the female narcissist and the male narcissist. And while there are some overlaps generally around how it's defined and around that grandiosity, there are some distinct ways in which they show up. Maybe let's turn first to the male narcissist. And when I describe these qualities, I mean, you and I will start to explore in this podcast just what one feels like, because that is very connected to how we also define the person, how the person is feeling around the individual. But a male narcissist, there's several characteristics. They have an inflated sense of self-importance. They lack empathy. They're preoccupied with power. They need to be idealized constantly. They exploit their relationships. So it really is all about them, and they tend to kind of create an experience for their victims to feel less than, not good enough, that their opinions are not ever right. They create a lot of low self-esteem in individuals. Oftentimes it shows up in terms of being someone who wants to be the center of attention, and they often want to continue to maintain that kind of power.
Who doesn't want to be the center of someone's universe? Who doesn't want that?
That is true. It does come up with some people are kind of like want to be the center of attention. This is sort of like they can never not be.
Oh,
And if they aren't, they go into a rage. They feel destabilized if they are not the center of attention. Now, with a female narcissist, we still have that need for attention. We do have that sense of lack of empathy. Some of the nuances are this. Female narcissists tend to be extremely jealous. So if they're surrounded by a bunch of women or they're working with a bunch of people, they have a real need to make sure that they are always number one. They will find a way to cut that other person out. This comes up a lot in female narcissists in like friend groups or in situations, perhaps even in relationships with couples. The female narcissist wants the male attention, even with the men who are married and they're supposedly friends with their wives. They want that attention, sometimes even creating acts of where it lures infidelity into those relationships.
oh, okay.
The female narcissist she also wants power, but the way she goes about it is a little different. She wants money, but it shows up in terms of excessive spending of money. Okay. The female narcissist shows up a lot in the family space, meaning they tend to be emotionally unavailable. Okay. And so you'll see it in their relationship with their children. So they will be extremely critical. They will make their kids feel like they're not good enough. They will have very high demands of their children, right? So there's a lot around that space where the female narcissist needs to always be admired, but they are also the ones that can be distant to make their loved ones feel less than as well.
Oh, okay. Like you want all that respect and admiration, but you're not really available for any actual bond, sort of.
Yes. There's the inability to bond, to really have that love and care. So they're extremely selfish, right? It's extremely self-absorbed. So their needs need to be met. So they would show up as sort of like, for example, in the workplace, it would show up as the boss that always needs to get all of the attention, no matter who she's delegated things to. And that shows up for the male also, right? That she needs to be the center. For the family relationships, it could be sometimes they show up as the mother-in-law who has no room for her son's wife, right? It shows up in a lot of different ways.
Okay. Wow. And what impacts? Okay, how does it affect the kid? Like, let's say we have a child, and scenario one, your father is a narcissist. Scenario two, your mother is a narcissist. So, what impact does it have on the kid in either scenario?
What a great question. It can have a similar impact. It can also have a different impact. So with the female narcissistic mother, there is the experience of not feeling good enough, similar with the male. But if the female narcissistic mother is the center, right, of the home and the heart, so to speak, let's say she is the mother that's at home raising the child more than, let's say, the father is, then what will happen is for that child, they will consistently have the experience of a love that's distant. They may not feel loved. They may not feel cared for. They may feel that their opinions or their views or things they want to do are dismissed. They may also have a narcissistic mother, maybe someone that wants their child constantly in beauty pageants because it makes her look good. So it's often around that. The narcissistic father can show up very similarly. He might want to show dominance or power over the child. The narcissistic father may have very high expectations around the trajectory of the child's, capabilities in activities, in school, a lot of pressure there. May show up as the child not being able to just have fun in their activities. They have to show up in a certain way. They have to be the best. But I would say that in both situations, there could be very similar results. The
Okay.
child still ends up with very low self-esteem,
Yeah,
with
inferiority
feeling they're
complex.
good enough, and even like picking partners that are toxic, that actually aren't good for them, unhealthy relationship situations,
Yeah.
or the child can become a narcissist as well, because this is what's been modeled for them.
Yeah, but if narcissism is all about you being all puffed up and you've been pressed down by your parents, how do you become an? I thought you just become somebody with like very very fragile, low self-esteem and all that. Like, where do you get the confidence to be this grandiose?
Well, the irony is that narcissists actually have a deep low self-esteem. They actually aren't really confident, but they come across as extremely charming and confident. But the psychological roots are is that their self-esteem is so low that they need to have their narcissistic minions. They need to have people idealize them consistently because their self-esteem is so low. So
Okay.
I know it gets a little complex because most people think, oh, it's because they're super confident, but actually they're not. But
Okay.
they appear to be so, and they get their supply from those who worship them.
Like, oh, worship it, damn it.
Yes, yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So now I have two questions, but now the first part, if a child that has a narcissist parent can become one, so I guess being exposed to a narcissist or at least having one in your life for a large amount of time can make you a narcissist. So apart from that, are there any ways that one becomes a narcissist apart from just having one in your life?
Meaning like beyond just the parent that
Yeah,
has
yeah,
kind of elbow, etc.
yeah.
Oftentimes narcissism this usually does stem from what's been modeled in the family. If
Okay.
someone is either, it could also be the overbearing almost to the parent that almost is constantly elevating their child. So you have the distant parent, but then you could have the parent that's like, you're the best, you're always
Basically
amazing,
worshiping you.
you're incredible, right? And then it's constantly, they're feeding them and feeding them. They cannot manage mistake or disappointment. But sometimes it happens in traumatic, if there's been trauma. Maybe someone has been in a situation where they were adopted. Maybe they've been in foster homes, but a lot of it is stemming then, yes, from their environments, who they've been surrounded by, what kind of traumatic experiences have they experienced to create this. So there's a lot of ways that that kind of happens.
Okay, okay. And so we had looked at two scenarios about how having a narcissistic parent can affect a child. Now take it to a different way. How can that affect an adult in a relationship? So scenario one, your partner, your male partner is narcissist. Scenario two, your female partner is narcissist too. Um, are there any actual difference between the two, or it's pretty much the same?
Well, I'll describe some common traits around narcissism. And even though every situation is unique, I'll also describe some scenarios on how it shows up for the relationship where someone's wife is narcissistic and the relationship with someone's husband or partner or they're dating someone. So here's some important concepts that I feel our listeners could be attuned to and understand better, because I truly believe educating yourself on this is the first step. The first one is called love bombing. And love bombing is when the person first becomes involved with the narcissist. This is how they get drawn into the relationship, whether it's a male or a female. The narcissist then is constantly saying how much they love the person, how amazing they are. They're doing very grand gestures. They are just, let's talk about,
You cheated on me.
roses and flowers, or saying that they're just incredible people and they want to see them all the time. They're very charming. And so whether it's a male or a female, a lot of times the love bombing starts. So for the male, if they're dealing with the female narcissist, this feels really good, right? Like, here's this woman that's idealizing them. Who doesn't really like that?
Oh,
And if it's a female who might have had some, feelings of insecurity or a time in their life where they're feeling that,
pretty good.
like they want a partner, they're going to eat this up.
Yeah.
Right? It's got the love bombing, right? It's called love bombing. Then you have what's called the gaslighting. So you're now in it, right? You're in it. You've been love bombed. You're hooked. Suddenly
Real
this
you in.
becomes, right, they reel you in. You're telling our friends, you're telling everybody
Oh,
about
they're
this,
so
right?
wonderful.
They're amazing. And your friends are envious. They might even be, wow, they can't wait to meet this person. They might even meet them and say, oh my God, you're
You're
right.
lucky.
Wish we were treated that way.
No, you don't.
And then the gaslighting begins. And gaslighting is where the narcissist starts to reel themselves back. This is where they're slowly starting to become more, you'll see they'll become more critical of you. Sometimes they're unavailable. All of a sudden you're wondering what happened. Why are they pulling back? Where's that person that I was getting to know? Where's that person that I felt so connected with? They become a little bit more emotionally unavailable. They start to put you down a little bit more. You see it more and more. They start to maybe even isolate you from your safety net, your village, the people you'd hang out with. They start to manipulate you. They start to think that, no, it's you, it's not them. What do you mean I'm not available? I'm here all the time. What are you talking about? That's called gaslighting. So that takes place, and that leaves an individual feeling really rather confused because all they know is this charming person who's love bombed them. They're hooked and they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
They also now have friends or family members saying, what are you talking about? This person's great. And then you have that being reeled in, and they start to be connected to that person, but in a very toxic way. They are now beaten down into feeling like everything's their fault. They're feeling like they're the ones who are not good enough. This happens in both the men and women. But what happens is often men don't talk about it because there's a feeling of shame. Yes, exactly. That, right? So you've got a lot of sense for men not wanting to really admit that this is happening until they start to become normalized and start to understand how unhealthy it is and that they're not alone in the situation. With the narcissistic wife, there's emotional unavailability, there can be some infidelity, there could be a constant need for attention. It's never good enough. He can never say enough. He can never say you're beautiful enough. He can never say that you're smart enough. There's constant jealousy, there's possessiveness, there's control.
Insecurities everywhere.
A lot of it. Can't go anywhere. There can also be in both a little bit of domestic violence. So the narcissistic wife wants to possess her husband. You'll see it in excessive spending. She wants to make sure that she's in charge and can do whatever she wants to and needs a lot of attention.
That is such an emotionally abusive relationship.
It really is. But sometimes it can be really subtle. And that becomes tricky because we have what's called the covert narcissist. This is what comes up a lot in my work. Sometimes it's not as obvious, right? People come into my office, they're talking about either they're dating someone, a lot of people that are dating someone, they're in their 20s, right, or 30s, and they're like, this person is so great, I don't know what's going on, I really want them back, or I'm dating them and we keep having these arguments. This is what comes up. Or you'll have it in a long-term marriage and someone is not as aware of it because it's so subtle around how they behave, and that's called the covert narcissist. It's a little bit more passive aggressive. It doesn't show up as obviously, but it slowly is there. The isolation, the criticism, the making you feel less than. It's a little bit more subtle. Where suddenly someone is like, I don't know, I don't feel so good about myself. What's going on here?
Oh, okay. How? The first part is, how do you know that you're a narcissist, whether very blatant or the covert one you just mentioned, and how do you know that your partner is one?
Well, I would say a lot of times individuals don't know until they start to recognize and get more in touch with how they're feeling. When they start to see that or notice things like feeling like they're not feeling as confident, they're feeling like they're scared every time they want to do something that their partner's not going to let them, or they're feeling like suddenly that they're noticing their partner's lying, but making it feel like they're the ones that are crazy.
Yeah.
You might even notice that their partner is holding secrets, and this is where the either emotional affairs or pure physical affairs are coming in. They notice that their partners never apologize for anything. Partners go into rage, right? They go into a rage. They get so angry, even if you say something like, "How about doing it this way?"
So correcting them, like I'm wrong.
Yeah, so often you start to think about what that is, and then what happens is people start to like either research it, or they might go to a therapist, or they may be talking to a friend, or even their parent, and it starts to come together, and all of a sudden they start to see these qualities,
like,
and they're, oh my God, yeah. I'm with a narcissist. I think I'm with a narcissist, and then they seek help or they try and figure it out. That's usually how it happens. You don't necessarily say, "Oh, I'm with a narcissist." Like you don't just know it like that.
This is ridiculous, and this is also based on like novels that sort of like The Power of Love, let's call it that. So is it possible if you dated a narcissistic, having a partner that is narcissistic, to fix them or to sort of make them change, or like something of that sort?
Oh, yeah. You know what? That is asked so many times when either people are in a relationship, and I've been like asked this in other interviews and stuff. You know, I'm going to say something that might seem like a controversial answer, because the majority of individuals are going to say no. And most of the time, you cannot change a narcissist. However, I would say this: if there is someone who's a narcissist and they recognize it, they are, let's say you're in couples work and, you know, someone says do you recognize that these are narcissistic tendencies, or et cetera, then if they do the work, if they are in intensive therapy, they get an assessment, they, 3 times a week, they work on themselves, etc., they manage it, and they're in couples work on top of it, yes. Can they maybe shift? I would say that there's possibility and options and hope. If they can look at the roots, if they can see what their traumas were and how it was formed. Oftentimes this isn't so easy though. But it also depends, Abby, on where they are in the spectrum. If they are pathological, if they are a narcissistic abuser, if there's someone that has narcissistic symptoms, if they're on this side of the spectrum, then yes, through the work, they can work on themselves, we can work on it and move through it, but it's still very, very difficult. Usually you say run in the other direction to someone that's with a narcissist.
So there's like nothing you can do about it. It's just like you die that way. There's no like work. Unless you yourself figure it out, then there's no change. You just keep getting worse and worse and worse.
Well, you have to, be willing to go to therapy, go to someone who specializes in narcissism, own it, do the work, take action consistently, see what other subjective experiences are. So there's, there may be some possibility around that. If you are a narcissist and you have bipolar disorder, or you're a narcissist, you're borderline, and you also get some psychiatric help. But it's rare that a narcissist owns that he or she is a narcissist. So first it's got to be that step. It's very rare someone's going to own it. They will usually say, I am not, you are. I am not, it's you. You're the one who made me like this. You're the one who's created this. You're the one with the problem.
Okay. In the beginning, you had mentioned, while we are defining what a narcissist is, you had mentioned like a lack of empathy. So are narcissists sort of sociopaths?
There are forms of narcissist where we would say the narcissistic sociopath.
Oh.
Yeah. So you could have the narcissistic sociopath, and then you could have a pure NPD, or you could just have someone on the spectrum of narcissism. NPD, narcissistic personality abuse disorder. Yeah.
like physical abuse.
You could, yeah. So not all narcissists go in the direction of being physically abusive, but yes, there are narcissists that go in the direction of being physically abusive. And this is where, again, I would say, you know, get help immediately, get the support, have the village, go to see a counselor and get the support you need, get the domestic violence specialist to help you, because those can be pretty, you know, also serious. When we go back to what you were asking me about the men who are with a narcissist who gets physical, that's where it also gets very difficult, because they, again, men don't want to admit that they're being
Yeah,
physically abused as much as maybe women do.
yeah,
And so that comes up, and this is where we really need to hold the space of being able to normalize it, to be able to say this happens, this is
yes, yeah,
because it's so emotionally manipulative. And for men also, maybe I don't want to respond, you know, you know, they don't want to, like, I'm not going to be aggressive. The man could even be bigger than the woman. So
yeah.
because, you know, it's really painful.
And
Yeah.
what does the treatment look like? Is it like medication? Is it writing about your past, your family? What exactly does this treatment involve? Or you just like sit down and talk to your therapist and like, how do you feel today? Is it like that?
For someone who's a narcissist that comes into therapy,
Yes, yes.
I mean, it's rare that a narcissist will come in to own that they're a narcissist. But oftentimes there will be someone who comes to therapy about different things. And, you know, I may start to recognize that they are a narcissist. You know, they may be talking about constantly blaming someone and how awful that person is. And they're giving, you know, over and over again, they're repeating how everybody in their life is this way. And then, you know, it makes you think, wait a second, I think this person is a narcissist. But
Yeah.
that's a little bit more complicated. But I would say, generally speaking, there's a lot of different modalities and approaches. I mean, there is psychoanalysis, which is that real deeper 3 times a week psychoanalytic work where you go deep into the subconscious. There's trauma work where you work on various tools around the trauma space. You work with the narcissist around that. There's also what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy, where you're trying to replace the behaviors and how this individual operates. And it's very structured and tool oriented. So I would say that there's a lot of ways to approach it. And then going back to the space of, depending on, you know, psychiatric help, medication as a combination with the various modalities.
Okay. And because a narcissist is very charming, at what point before it gets so bad can you like spot something and get the hell out of there? Like, nope, nope, red flag, get out. At what point do you do that before it gets to the point of you like completely doubting your judgment or being physically assaulted?
Well, let's say that someone is just starting to, let's start with someone starting to date. I would say notice during those early dating moments, are they ever curious about you? Do they ask you about you? Do they seem to be caring? How do they describe their own relationships? Do they only talk about themselves? Are they constantly talking about their achievements? Are they love bombing? Are they weaving in and out of your life? Are they not consistent? Do you sort of notice subtle lies? Do you start to notice, like, are they really telling the truth? Why does this seem off? I would say, so early on, these are some of the red flags. Are you recognizing when you describe something that they may not be showing a lot of empathy? Do they never apologize? Even if they show up late, do they never say, oh, I'm really sorry about that? Do they say, oh, hey, you know what? But you get late sometimes. Do they never own it? So these are some of the things. Then let's say all of this has happened and you continue to be with this person, which happens, right? This is how people ultimately end up being in a relationship or marrying a narcissist.
Yeah.
They keep going. Maybe they keep going because they've had a parent themselves who's a narcissist and they don't notice the red flags.
Yeah.
maybe because they're just so happy to be in a relationship, they don't want to notice the red flags, right? They're really looking for someone. They want to have love. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like you like the
right?
idea of love, no matter who it is.
Yes, exactly. Then what happens is, I would say, start to look at if you're starting to feel like something's being chipped away at you. If you start to notice that this person needs to dominate everything, if you start to see that they are becoming the center of attention in everything, if you start to notice that you're feeling a little fear about bringing in your own opinions, things aren't feeling so mutual. They're very subtle. So you may not have complete low self-esteem, but you start to see things. You might even notice it, for example, sexually. You might find that something is never good enough for them in the bedroom. You might find they're comparing you. You may have even
Who does that?
Right? Yeah, right. I mean, and then you're like trying to like do all these things to make them feel good about
Your
themselves.
self-confidence is like, wow.
So these, as you slowly but surely, that it builds and it builds. They're not apologizing. Maybe they're dancing around the relationship. Everything you're doing is wrong. You start to notice. And then I think really start to say, why am I in this? If you see some tendency of rage before it gets violent, like you're afraid that they are going to hurt you, that's when you really, and I would say this for anyone in that potential domestic violence situation, do you feel threatened?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be physical to feel that way.
Yeah. Plus, sometimes when you feel threatened and there is no actual physical interaction, then you feel sort of like paranoid, like, okay, he did not do anything. Maybe the problem is I overreacted, some of that sort.
Exactly. And this is why it makes it so hard and so tricky, because for a lot of people, it's so confusing for them. Sometimes it can be so subtle that they're not sure. And then over time, they start to see it. And what happens is they may come into my office and we'll slowly start to identify it. And then you know what happens? They'll say, how did I let this happen? How did I not know? And that's one thing I want to tell everybody. Please do not criticize yourself for not knowing. Do not be hard on yourself about it. It happens. There's so many things in our life that make us not realize or recognize certain things. What's important is when you do.
Run, flee.
When you do, right? When the cards are, when you realize, when you start to build on it. But you know what else, Abby? A lot of times people go back and forth. Let's say you're married to a narcissist, you have children.
Yeah.
Easy to just leave.
You can't. You have kids to think of.
Right. So people like struggle. This goes on for a while. It is not something that literally even after a few months, sometimes it can even take a good year for someone to say, all right, I'm ready. This needs to stop. I can't do this anymore.
And for if you're married, the last scenario I just gave, if you're married to a narcissist and you have kids, is there a way to sort of leave that marriage without harming or hurting your kids, but at the same time protecting your mental space, because this is definitely not in any way healthy for you either. So like get out of it without making your kid feel like you're abandoning them, and then getting them out as well.
Yes, it gets tricky, but yes, I think what's important is that the parent who's getting out continues to be that loving parent, that parent that's healthy. I think that's the parent that if they sort of build their own mental healing, they can impart that to the child. For many parents, they will even bring their child into therapy to be able to express some of the things that have come up with the other parent. I would say family therapy, so you have that objective person guiding the family when you have a narcissistic parent that gives the child to feel supported. You can also work with your child for them to realize that they're not alone. They know that you are always there to support them. Sometimes the narcissist in the relationship may be narcissistic, but may not completely show up as as being so abusive to the child. It could be very subtle where they're still controlling the parent. And the parent can take care of their mental health and still be love the child and support the child. But I would highly recommend that when you're getting out, if you can minimize, it's very hard, but if you can try and minimize custody arrangements so you have more time, that's not always so easy in some states or countries. If you can make sure that your child always feels seen and heard by you and knows that you are there to support them. If you can even point out, I'm not saying you're supposed to throw the other parent under the bus, but let them understand when things are not healthy or normal, help them to have their voice. And as they get older, they can feel more empowered to have their voice and bring things to the other parent's attention more and more. So there are ways to be able to work on that in a very healthy way so that the child doesn't feel abandoned.
Okay. Do you think it's possible for a narcissist to ever truly love somebody in a healthy, non-obsessive, controlling way? Do you think it's possible?
I think that's it's very difficult. I think they feel that they are loving someone, but I don't think that they are capable of loving in a healthy way. They may feel that that is how they show their love, but really it's not a healthy love.
Yeah. The love bombing would take me off. It just feels like a sign of guilt. Like, putting in so much effort. Why?
Yes, yeah. So they may feel that they are actually loving this person.
It just seems like you're throwing things at me. I always feel like it's like in this cheating dramas where the one cheating feels guilty, so he tries to ease his guilt and placate you by buying you stuff. That'll be like the first scenario I think of. You start buying me things randomly.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is this. Someone who's a narcissist doesn't feel guilty. They won't feel guilty about it because they don't really have empathy for you, but they will love bomb you with stuff because they do not want to let go of the victim. They don't want to let go of that person who's in their life that is often fed.
Like a prisoner. Yeah. It's like you're holding you captive.
Yeah, they want to hold you captive, so they will panic. So they will behave like they feel guilty. They will say, they will gift you with things. They will apologize that, it'll never happen again, things of that nature. But it is not the same as someone who truly might have infidelity and there may be issues in the relationship and they truly feel, why did I do this? It's different. It's not the same.
The lack of guilt is very sociopathic. It's so creepy.
Yeah, that can be very sociopathic.
Yeah. Creepy.
Yes. It goes back to this. It's all in a spectrum, right? It's all about narcissistic symptoms, covert narcissists, NPD, sociopathic, and just keeping that in mind.
Oh, okay. And are there any misconceptions that people have about narcissism, or at least is there a picture painted about them publicly that might not exactly be true, like the glamorized, romanticized version of what they look like?
Great question. Not really, except if someone's a covert narcissist who show up differently, right? So, when we think about maybe people that are out in the spotlight, that someone might say, okay, there's someone that feels like a narcissist, etc. That feels so grandiose, right? They loom very large. People idealize them. They have their minions. Or oftentimes people may define the typical narcissist as that narcissistic boss who wants to constantly hold that power position. And there are very obvious traits there. But I would say when someone's a covert, that's where I have to say that's the one that's harder to dissect. And that's the one we want to step away and say, this is not stereotypical. This is the one that's subtle.
Okay. Would you say a micromanaging boss is a bit of a narcissistic boss because they are technically controlling you?
Not necessarily. There can be a manager that's micromanaging because they may not trust their employees to actually do the work. They feel very stressed out. Maybe they have a boss, the boss's boss who also micromanages, etc. But you can have someone who's a narcissist and micromanaging falls under the umbrella. So the narcissistic boss will have micromanaging, will take credit, will try and pin you against other people in the department, actually, because they want to have their minions. They're the ones that might even throw you under the bus.
Like
the boss
a dearest movie.
And yeah, so those kinds of things, right, are like you have to really document. You have to make sure that you're very careful. Like, is this the job that you really want to stay in? Because it can be very difficult to unless you're one of the narcissistic minions that are constantly like at the beck and call of this boss. You have to be careful because they'll consistently bleed boundaries. They will always be trying to make you do more and more and more. It'll never be good enough. So I would say sometimes those are stereotypes that do exist, the narcissistic boss, but then you have little workplace things that might be a little different.
Okay. Is it possible for two narcissists to work together, either work-wise or relationship-wise? Is it possible?
Well, it's very hard if you have two narcissists because both of them need idealization. When a narcissist finds its prey, it's usually because that person either may already have a bit of low self-esteem, they might be a highly sensitive empath where they always want to care for someone and take care of them, right? People that are caregivers, they often draw the narcissist. There are people that are ones that show a lot of empathy. They're very sensitive to people. And so then they will draw the narcissist. So I would say someone who's a narcissist with a narcissist, it'll be a challenge because what they're looking for, the narcissist can't give them.
Yeah.
Right. Can't give them. So in a work environment where it also becomes difficult is if you'll see heads of, let's say, departments where you may have one person that's a narcissist and another department head is a narcissist, then we see a challenge, right? Then we see this workplace dynamic existing at C-suite that can become challenging, or even just at manager level where they're butting heads and their employees are like, oh my God, how do we work in this space?
It already sounds very toxic and confrontational.
Yes, exactly. So you really have to strategize and figure out how you're going to play the game there.
Not worth it. I don't like navigate all that every single day. Not worth it.
Abby, you're a self boss. You're like, good. This is good.
Yeah. I feel like I would clash with one. And like, I would clash with one.
Yeah, it is so difficult. And I have to tell you, for individuals that actually, come to therapy around that space, they're very traumatized, especially if they end up being let go by the narcissistic boss. And they have been someone that they felt like has done really good work. Yeah. And they can't understand it. It's so traumatizing.
You tell me that after I have dealt with all your bullshit in this unhealthy environment, you have the guts to fire me. Oh my God. Yes. I will curse your ancestors for 25 years.
Exactly. You're like, what just happened?
And let's go with the bag like, screw your entire family. Good day. I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, you know what? Onward to better. Onward. I always say, you're going to learn from it and then make sure that whether it's a relationship, a work environment, whatever it is, learn from it. It's not your only story, right? We repeat what we don't repair. When you repair it and you learn from it, it's not going to be your story. And set your boundaries. Anyone that's been through this will learn that they'll start to notice it and they start to set their boundaries everywhere in a healthy way.
Okay, okay. I guess after this happens, when your next partner love bombs you, you're like, no, stop, back away. I'm doing this. You run away.
Yes, and just go away. You know, and that happens too, where people have been in narcissist after narcissist because they're so drawn to a particular personality type that they may be dating a narcissist and then they're dating a narcissist again, and then they may be dating a narcissist again, and they're
You're not
literally
learning
like,
from it.
what am I doing?
You're not learning from that. What the hell?
It's like, okay, this is where it has to stop. This is where
After the second one, you should have just stopped and go, something is wrong here. Oh, and before we wrap up, any questions or any more information that I should have asked or should have come up, but we skipped it?
No, it feels like we really covered a lot. I think this is a space, though, where there's so many different areas one can dive into. You know, we could just purely dive into all around corporate narcissism, the narcissistic corporation, the narcissistic employer, the narcissistic boss. And we were dabbling a little bit around that. Then we've got the space, the female narcissist versus the male narcissist, which I think there's so much there, but I think we've really kind of brought some things to light.
Okay.
Then we've got divorcing the narcissist. And then we have the parent who's the narcissist.
Yeah.
I would say that these are like big, you know, kind of chunky spaces. Then I think maybe there's something we haven't looked at that might be when your child is showing narcissistic tendencies, you know, and I have a little clip on that, around that, you know, talks about that, where, you know, being in touch with that, noticing it early on in the child and making sure the child cultivates empathy. You want them to see that they notice others' behaviors. You know how that shows up? Bullying. That's a little bit of a sign. I need to be mindful that my child might be showing some symptoms of narcissism. Bullying, they're not empathic.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
you hurt other kids and you feel nothing.
Right? Or they're like mean girls or mean boys, right? Like that's when you're like, okay, we got to rein this in here.
Like sociopathic flags going off right now. You can hit somebody and you feel nothing, just like, wait a minute, think about that.
Exactly.
You said you had a clip on that. Can you send it to me or the link so I can put it in the description?
Yes, absolutely. I'll absolutely send it to you.
Okay.
I think the part that maybe just as we wrap up that I can't emphasize any more than I'm going to is the whole space around boundaries. And really in one's life, especially in the space of a narcissist, they will bleed boundaries. They will, you know, your feelings don't matter, their feelings only matter. And you find it hard to recognize what's yours and what's theirs. It comes up in family members, boundaries, like, no, we want to come over all the time. No, what do you mean you're not going to do this? That's selfish. So I would say boundaries are so important. So for anybody, setting boundaries and recognizing where do I begin and end and where does this person begin and end can be very helpful and healing to your journey in surviving a narcissist and leading a healthier life.
Okay. And it's a disorder, like a narcissistic disorder or a personality type? How would you categorize it?
Yes, it is. So narcissist personality disorder is a disorder. And then you've got narcissistic symptoms along the spectrum of that.
Okay. So if someone feels like they are dating one, their child is one, or perhaps they are one, or maybe their boss is a narcissist and they want to work with you around that, how do you work with them on that, and how can they contact you for that?
Well, there's a lot of different, tools I use in my practice. And so everything from psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, to hypnotherapy, if they really feel, stuck, to EMDR, which is helping to reprocess the trauma. But oftentimes it's just very healing going through psychotherapy, identifying it, working on your boundaries, realizing the areas which you can repair, and then building your new story reaching back into that empowered self, rebuilding your confidence, and kind of being able to move forward. So I would say reach out, share with me what's taking place in your life.
Okay.
You can work through this, and I do it with my clients. We do it together, and it's wonderful to see their journey of finding health, happiness, and love, or finding the job that's better for them. The way they can reach out to me is they can follow me. They can follow me on social media and then reach out through my website, Opening the Doors Psychotherapy. They can also email me, Babita Spinelli LP @gmail.com. You can also private message me or just pick up the phone. Happy to take a call and have a dialogue.
Okay. I'll have the website, your website in the video and in the description below. So if you want to work with her, or you just want to know a lot more about narcissism, and if you're in contact with one, because you probably end up becoming one in the long run, or it's gonna crush your self-esteem and just put you down and have you doubt yourself, these are resources that you could use.
Absolutely, yes. And you'll see, like, one of the things that I really want to do for individuals is post a lot of resources on it. I share a lot on my website so people can at least, become educated, become more aware, and get support even in that way.
I didn't think it was such a serious thing until now. I just thought it was like, yeah, you're a bit full of yourself, but aren't we all?
Isn't it amazing what we find out, right?
Yeah. Ooh, anything else you want to say before we end the interview?
It was great to be here. I'm glad that we had this dialogue, right? I think it's just always wonderful for everyone to recognize things that are coming up. And I just say, look, you're going to be okay if this is what you're experiencing. Trust yourself. You're going to be okay.
Yay! Okay, so that's the second part of the series. So the first part was divorce recovery. This is on narcissism, and then the third would be on career change, right?
That's right. Yes.
Ooh, okay.
That's transition.
Oh, like a change, move from one career to the other.
Exactly. What that looks like, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be fun. We're going to dive into that right next.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap this up. It's nice having you here.
Nice to be here, Abby. Talk to you soon.
You too.